Today, I'm going to be debunking the Black Hebrew Israelites, a religious organization which claims the patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel were all Western Sub-Saharan Africans, and allegedly, all they need to prove this is the Bible. The translation of the Bible they prefer to use is the King James Version, because according to them, the King of England in the 1600s was a black man. And if you know anything about British history, you would know that King James descends from William the Conqueror, who was a Norman, and the Normans were Vikings who converted to Christianity. Like the founder of Normandy, his brother was Ragnar Lothbrok, who the whole show of Vikings is based off of. So, to be logically consistent, if you want to claim King James was a black man, you would also have to say that the Vikings were also black people. But let's get into the scriptures, starting out with Lamentations 4:8, where it says, "The visage or appearance of the Israelites was blacker than coal." This is the part they love to cherry pick. However, I'm going to give us some well-needed context to understand this verse. What Jeremiah is describing in this verse is the decaying corpses of the Israelites. That's why he says, "They who were laying in the streets were unrecognizable, and their skin has withered." I mean, just think about the name of this book, Lamentations. Typically, when someone is lamenting, they're mourning the death of a loved one. Furthermore, when you look up the mummy of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, we could see exactly what Jeremiah saw, but based off of his hair and facial structure, we could tell that Thutmose was not a black man, even though his skin does look like coal. Also, Jeremiah recounts how prior to the Babylonians conquering Judah, they were living lavishly, wearing scarlet and eating delicacies. However, afterwards, they were made desolate. The reason I bring this up is because the verse right before Lamentations 4:8 describes how the house of Judah looked when they were still alive, and surprise, they were white. The other couple of verses they use to try and claim the Israelites were black are found in Revelation chapter 1, where it says, "Jesus' head and his hair was white like snow or wool." This is only talking about the color, and it says Jesus' head was white. So if he were to shave off all of his hair, the skin covering his skull would still be white. Next, it says that his eyes were like a flame of fire. Well, fire can't be a dark brown color, but definitely can be a bright blue color. Lastly, it says that the feet of Christ are like brass burned in a furnace, and if you've ever seen brass, when it reaches its boiling point, it's a glowing white color because, as John says, God is a light. Christ is appearing here in his heavenly form, just like at the Transfiguration, where his face shined like the sun. This is why verse 16 says that his countenance is like the sun as it shineth, and in Daniel chapter 10, it says the face of Jesus is like lightning. Now, how they believe the Israelites got to Western Sub-Saharan Africa, I don't have a clue, because nowhere in the Bible does it say that happened or would happen. Although, to the contrary, we are told by Pliny the Elder how the Carthaginians, who were originally Phoenicians, how they sailed out into the Atlantic and explored the coast of West Africa. Of course, if the Phoenicians were sailing all that way, they would have set up colonies on those islands just off the coast of West Africa, but all those islands were uninhabited until the Age of Discovery in the 1500s, with the exception of one cluster of islands that was inhabited before then, and those would be the Canary Islands. But the problem here for the Black Hebrew Israelites is that the inhabitants of these islands were white, so much so that the Spanish and Portuguese theorized that the islanders must have descended from Romans who marooned there in antiquity. Who they really descended from were the Phoenician Israelites, and they're like a time capsule showing us just how white the ancient Israelites were.